The Soviets didn't quit Venus. Here is why. Venus' atmosphere is hot enough to melt lead. Its snow is made of metal, and the air on its surface is as thick as water. Yet, the Soviet Union kept sending probe after probe, burning millions of dollars to explore Earth's hellish twin. Was it really all for science? Or was there something else driving the US' biggest space race rival? Venus is aptly called Earth's twin. It's similar in size to our planet, and it's also a terrestrial planet, and its orbit is closest to Earth's, making space travel shorter. Unlike Mars, a thick cloud cover makes its surface a mystery. A life-bearing surface, unending seas, no one knew what could be down there. A few cared enough to try, until the Cold War. It was the 1960s, and the rivalry had gone far beyond Earth's borders and spilled into space. What started as a battle for aerial superiority with long-range missiles and satellites had now turned into a race to be the best at space flight. This was the space race. And Earth's two superpowers were determined to win it. The Soviet Union took the lead with a series of firsts. First artificial satellite, Sputnik 1. First life in space, Laika the dog. First man in space, Yuri Gagarin. And as its technological capacity increased, the Soviet Union got more ambitious. How about first probe on another planet, they thought. First man on another planet? They chose to explore a planet. They chose to explore Venus. Only, they had no idea just how challenging it would be. The Soviet Union launched many probes outside our planet during the space race, but the first one to head for Venus was the Venera 1. It was the first of many failures. The first Venera 1 probe didn't make it out of Earth, but the second one, launched on February 12, 1967, got to outer space. Due to some errors in design, however, it was unable to connect properly to Earth. Though it passed some 62,000 miles from Venus, no data was sent back. A failure, but one the Soviets aimed to rectify. But before they did, their rivals beat them to the punch. The US Mariner 2 came as close as 21,000 miles of Venus and transmitted its findings back to Earth. Part of its data was the temperature of the Venusian atmosphere, which was measured to be around 500 degrees Celsius. This exposed a new set of challenges for anyone who wished to explore Venus. The planet was proving to be a more tricky planet than anticipated. And the Soviets? They sent another probe anyway. Venera 2 was sent to fulfill the same goal as Venera 1, to fly past Venus and take readings from afar. Launched on November 12, 1965, it made its closest approach to the planet 3 months later, passing within some 15,000 miles of it. But despite the improvements, structural issues sabotaged the probe. Like Venera 1, it couldn't transmit data back to Earth. Another failure. But the Soviets were undeterred. They went back to the drawing board with plans for a more ambitious project. To not just fly past Venus, but to land on it. Venera 3 was the fruit of their labor, the carrier of their hopes and dreams. Weighing about a ton, this probe contained both a flyby spacecraft like Venera 1 and 2, as well as a new component, a smaller probe to enter the atmosphere. And this most anticipated probe lost contact 3 months after launch. It crashed on Venus weeks later on March 1, 1966. The good part was, it earned the Soviets the record of first crash landing on another planet. The bad part? No data was sent back. Now, at this part, most would pack up and aim elsewhere. The Soviets, though, already had plans for Venera 4. The next probe, Venera 4 had a lander with a parachute that let it decelerate upon entering the atmosphere. This probe entered Venus on October 18, 1967, 4 months after launch. It spent 93 minutes in the Venusian atmosphere, sending data about the composition, temperature, and pressure of the atmosphere back to Earth. This was the Soviets' counterattack, built to withstand up to 20 times Earth's atmospheric pressure. It was their first true success. Venus crushed it midway through its descent. The day after, the US Mariner 5 flew past Venus, and the combined data from both probes concluded that Venus' atmosphere pressure could be as much as 75 to 100 times that of Earth, way past the prediction of the Soviets. That's like being over a half a mile underwater. Humans can barely survive past a fifth of that. Venera 4 suffered a meltdown when the pressure went past its capacity. Unfortunately, Venera 5 and 6 were similar in design to Venera 4, though they had smaller parachutes and stronger build to compensate for the denser atmosphere. With the new data, the Soviets already knew the probes wouldn't survive to reach the surface. But this was the space race, and not even Earth's hellish twin could make the Soviets admit a loss. The Soviets launched the probes anyway. Venera 5 and 6 sent back data for 53 and 51 minutes respectively before succumbing to the hostile temperature and pressure. Launched 5 days apart in early January 1969, these probes carried new experiments to allow for a more detailed analysis of the Venusian atmosphere. The fog hiding the skies of Venus was finally uncovered by the Soviets' tenacious probes. The next target? The surface. Venera 7 was an overkill. It was built to withstand twice as much pressure as the atmospheric pressure on Venus' surface, and a temperature 100 degrees Celsius in excess of its surface temperature. Venus had stumped the Soviets time and time again. The US had won the lunar battle by achieving the first landing of man on the moon. For the Soviets to maintain their show of technological superiority, they needed a victory. Venera 7 could not fail. And so they chose to err on the side of caution, which was fortunate because Venus indeed struck again. Venera 7's parachute failed while it was still airborne, causing it to hit the ground at 37 miles per hour and roll over. The probe's hardiness might have contributed to its survival after such a fall. And so, on December 15, 1970, over 9 years after Venera 1 launched, Venera 7 achieved the first soft landing on another planet. The probe transmitted data for a combined 53 minutes, recording a surface temperature as hot as an oven and a pressure around 90 times that of Earth. Venus is called Earth's hellish twin for a reason. Venera 8 pretty much confirmed what Venera 7 had earlier discovered. This probe reached Venus without rolling over on July 22, 1972. Beyond taking the temperature and pressure, it confirmed that there was enough light on Venus to take a photograph. 3 years later, we got this. On October 22, 1975, the Soviets made history. 14 years of failures. 14 years of crashes. After all the sacrifices, the Soviets took the first image from the surface of another planet. It was an unmatchable milestone. The probe Venera 9 was operational for 53 minutes, and after a smooth landing, it took pictures with one of its 2 inbuilt cameras. Venera 10 replicated this feat 3 days later with an operation time of 65 minutes. And the next probes? Venera 11 and 12, built similarly to Venera 9 and 10, launched in September 1978, but they had issues with their cameras and did not return any images. Was there still anything worth searching for on Venus? Venera 13 and 14 aimed to find out. These probes were optimized versions of Venera 9 to 12 launched in 1981. They had acoustic devices to measure the wind speed and soil analyzers to study soil composition. And with their cameras, they took the last set of surface images for the Venera project. Venera 15 and 16 were launched in June 1983, not to enter Venus, but to orbit it and conduct surface imaging of the planet. These were the last of the Venera program, but the legacy persists. In the context of the Cold War, the Soviets successfully demonstrated their superiority in the Venusian landscape. Why would they send probes time and time despite the failures? The answer is evident today, decades after the collapse of the Soviet Union. No country can boast of Venusian missions as intense and groundbreaking as the Venera program. Venus is, and remains, a Soviet planet in terms of exploration and understanding. But would it remain that way? If we could land on Venus today, should we try again? Or is Venus simply not worth the risk anymore? Some scientists say it's the key to understanding climate change. Others say it's a technological dead end. What do you think? Should humanity return to Venus or leave it untouched?